Okay, so pushing really on with this one, we've done quite a few little bits and pieces. So, as you can see, underneath, gear doors on. To be honest, just cut off the tabs. Make sure you make the, a nice clean cut so you get the little rim running around. You'll know what I'm about. It's where the actual part sort of goes in, and sprue pegs. Without it, they don't sit in there, but they're in there, no glue. The wheels are now glued in place. The door hatches are on. Make sure the door hatches sort of go 90 degrees down. These are placed in, even though I've just bent one. I'll just put them up. The pylons are all in. We'll just give them another drop of glue. Be careful how you handle them and positioning them in, because you want them to be a nice tight fit so they sort of round up round them. There's nothing worse when you've got big gaps underneath pylons. So as I said, doors have gone in. We've put the speed brake in as well. As you can see, we've left it nice and clean. So I've done it as if it is a replacement part. Same perhaps with the door. I like to do it every now and again. I think it just breaks things up, especially if you've got quite a weathered aircraft, because it just totally changes it. The other thing we've done, we've gone along and we've put in the aerials on the top. Now I haven't done the bottom yet. They are a little bit too big. Ideally you want to go with photo etch, but if you go with photo etch, it means you've got to fill in all the holes. So with this way, because it was at the late stage, sometimes you can make them out a little bit thinner of plastic card, but it had big holes because it's got like plugs they go into, so you might want to just go along with them. So they are all in and done. The other thing as well, we've unmasked the window on the side. To be honest, it was all fogged up with dust and that. Damp cotton bud just goes straight in there, and a wipe around took care of that, no problem. So, a couple of things we've got going on at the moment. First of all, we're just putting some the actual pitot tubes on the wings. So we've got both of them on like that. I've just placed them in, glued them in, and then painted them with a metallic aluminium. Then I've overcoated them with gloss, purely so for handling as well, which just gives them that sort of more metal edge to them. The pylons are gone on us here, so really the last thing that can go on the wings before they're installed is the lights. Now when you're doing the lights, obviously port is red, green is starboard. Port is always on, looking forward on the aircraft. Sat in the cockpit is on the left hand side, starboard's on the right. Okay, little tip for you. If you're doing any type of light work, okay, make sure you paint them well in advance and then leave them alone, because more times than I'd like to count, okay, I've actually done the green work and put them on afterwards, okay, or made these lights, these go on the inside to be honest with the light, put them in there, then I've tried to handle them, then I've got red and green paint on my fingers, things like that. I've handled the model, and then before you know it, I've got green paint absolutely everywhere over my model. So what I always do now is paint them well in advance, a couple of hours, so it can totally dry off. Now the beauty about these things is they're a lovely fit, which is unusual, shall we say. Normally we have problems, but you might be able to see if we bring the camera in, top camera in nice and tight. They are the tiniest little things, but what's nice, they are hollow. Okay, the inside's hollow, so all you do, come along, a little bit of green, clear green on a cocktail stick and pop that in. And then what we can do, just place that down there, using crystal clear, we just come along like this, alright, and then all we do is just literally run a small amount, that's probably too much, so we just reverse the cocktail stick, okay, and take it all out, and then we just come along. Okay, and we just slip that in. If you have got any excess glue, to be honest, if it's only a little amount, I would leave it. If you've got lots, then you might have to do something about it. But there we go, that's in. Now that whiteness that you see will disappear and give you a nice clear look on the inside. So if you have got a gap, things like that, fear not, that will disappear. But it does give you very, very nice. So we've done the same with the other side. Exactly the same, and we've got the red on here now. As I said, I only done that one just before we came on camera as well, so it's still a little bit wet, but give it a couple of hours, it'll dry off, it'll be clear, and then those can be installed. I'm going to fit all the weapons, tanks and everything completely afterwards, but that's all done. Now, last couple of things we've been doing. The ejector seats, to be honest, they are a little bit boring, so what we've done to liven them up, I've done a milliput job. And to be honest, this one is probably a little overscale. So actually what we've done here, it's just milliput, rolled out, wetted, let to dry for about half an hour, then come back so it's quite stiff, cut with a razor blade into sizes and then put on. There is a tutorial for this on the site, okay, so you might want to go and have a look at that. It explains exactly how to do it. The great thing with using milliput over tapes and things like that I've done in the past is you can bend it, you can mould it around, you can put little holes in it like we've done here. Now that's still a little bit soft, okay, so it needs painting. This one here, to be honest, this one on the side is on its side, that's why it's a bit thinner, but probably more in scale looking wise, but I don't know, it's one of those things. Sometimes you can go too thin, too thick. It's getting it absolutely right. There's no golden rule for doing it. But by the time they're painted up, they will be a little bit thicker. But that's the seat. So I'm leaving them out for a moment. The only thing I have done is the yellow on the top. Here's our paint. For the pull handles, what I always do, paint them all yellow first, so you're absolutely fine. And then, I've got here, this is a glue applicator, but it works quite well for this. But what you do, you just grab the tiniest bit of glue, like so, all right, and then just come along and then just touch exactly where you want them to be. Okay, so you've done the top bits like that, that puts the little dots in. Okay, now all we do is then go around and do the sides. But by using a glue applicator versus a brush, you don't tend to go over the top. You can obviously just use a cocktail stick. But there we go, we've got the little pull handles now fitted to the top, looking quite nice. Okay, so we'll just do the same on the other one. Alright, so we just do the sides this time. And if it does go wrong, just come back with your yellow paint. And you can take it out, but by using like things like a glue applicator, it just makes them look a lot better. But there we go, that's those two done. As I said, I'm still waiting for those to dry before I can paint those harnesses. The harnesses would just have a little bit of buff colour and then a little bit of silver on the ends just to give the effect of buckles, things like that. The other little bits and pieces we've done, the refuelling, air-to-air refuelling knob. This one's just obviously flat black, it's been glossed so we get that sort of satin finish, okay, that we used before, and then I've done silver on the end for the refuelling tip, so that is quite straightforward. That's just going to come along and it's going to poke, hopefully, or would poke if it wasn't full up in there. Got a little tool, so I've just got a little Phillips head screwdriver just to round open the end. I didn't want to use a full-on set, but there we go, it should push in and give us our refueling probe like that, which is looking the part now. So we're almost getting to the stage now where we're completely finished and can get on. What we're going to do now is literally I'm just going to paint these seats, have a check around it, install the rest of the aerials and things underneath, okay, do things like that, have a general check over it, make sure we've got no problems anywhere, and then what we'll do is we're going to do some pastel weathering or pigment weathering, whichever way you want to do it, okay, to literally just go along and blend in and just do some little weathering type touches, things like that with a brush, everything else like that. And then what we do, we're going to give it a final coat of flat to seal all that in so it's all handleable, hence whilst I haven't actually glued down the front cockpit area, so we can do it all completely separate. Okay, and then once that's done, we can do final assembly and final photos. Okay, so there we go. It's basically all together. All the aerials are on, everything's in. Really, it's all totally finished. We just got to put final assembly. But before that, I just want to do something that I normally don't do. To be honest, I don't tend to mess around doing pigments and things like that, especially on aircraft, because I think it looks a little bit fake. But what I'm going to do with these is we've got two pastels, just got a black and a white, and we're just going to try and subtly put some little sort of scrapey marks and perhaps some weathering on, little drain marks. So what we did here with these wing sections, just to make them a little bit sharper, if you like, okay? And certainly for the underside, we can do little bits of streaking, things like that, which are dead simple. So all you need, a couple of pastels. These are just your normal sort of pastels that you buy anywhere for artwork. Okay, so then what we do is, if we just use a bit of an older one, just think the best way to do this. We do this on an old bit of plastic art. All we're going to do is just sand a bit off. So you want to use the fine side. Okay, and we're just going to just sand a little bit down onto a bit of paper. Now we're not going to need tons here, so we just sand a little bit. Okay, so we've got some white, and what we're going to do is some black as well. We want to make it a little bit sooty looking. And what we do, we've got quite a stiff brush, so we just pop that all down on here. Just clean out the area a bit. Okay, now ideally you'd have a bit of paper here lying here, but what we've got here is a little bit, so what we're going to do is just grab a bit of this together. Now at the moment it's a little bit coarser than a pigment. If you use pigments, you're traditionally using pigments, things like that, maybe you've got some of the stuff we used to do, it's a lot finer than this. This is quite coarse, okay? But what we're trying to do is literally just put this on to the model. If I just take this centre section out again, it's quite handy. I never glue this in place because it's quite handy because it comes out, but it means we can get easily inside the inner tail. So all we're going to do is just flick some on. Now, some of you guys might be seeing various things called filters and stuff like that. To be honest, this is the easy way of doing that type of thing. Okay, so we just put some on, and what we're trying to do is just pick up and then knock off everywhere we go. Now, we're not trying to coat this. It's not like armour where you're going to come along and just generally make a mess with it. Okay, all we're trying to do is just to give it a little bit of sort of streaking effect to it. You might be able to see it happening on the tail. It's one of those things, this is that it's very hard to show on camera like this because it is such a subtle thing that it doesn't show up particularly well. It's just what it does do is lend itself quite well to this type of colour scheme that we've got actually going on here. So what we're going to do is just pop along, okay, and then we're just going to go always with direction of airflow, but because this has got a flat finish on this, it should pick it up quite well, okay. So we can just pop around the actual aircraft with it, and you can do same thing, centres of panels, things like that. Okay, and when it's a little bit too much, perhaps you've got too much going on here, things like that, then there's a little thing we can show you in a minute. But all we're trying to do is roughly pick out perhaps certain things. Okay, so we're just going down here. So we just put a little bit too much on one side. Hopefully you'll be able to see that in a moment. Okay. I'll turn this around. Right, don't handle where you are. Okay, just avoid that area. Because otherwise what will happen is you will leave greasy, oily fingerprints which will help it stick. And obviously we don't want it to stick particularly that much. Okay, so this is just like a filtering type thing going on here. So now, quite important, round edges, we're going to put some around the nose. So very lightly. Just going to try and put some around the front. And hopefully what it will do is just give us a little extra level of weathering on here, just to help again break up this monotonous grey that we've got going on underneath here and around here. But again, if you get like there, I've got a fingerprint mark, I can see it myself. All we've done is knock it off a little bit. Okay, so there we go, that's roughly it. So we can do the same on the underside. So where you've got an access panel, something like that, we're just going to do it so it's like you've got stuff coming out of access panels, stuff out of wheel wells, things like that. Now you might be thinking, it's not doing much, is it? But you have to just wait for that bit. We've got a secret plan going on here. So we're just going to grab some down here. Okay. I made a right hash of that panel here. I keep knocking it with my finger. So this speed brake, we've got a new one, we just want to avoid a little bit, but we're just going to put a little bit over it just to knock it back just a fraction. We still want to keep that story going with it, but perhaps we just want to mark him in just a little bit going on here. That nose wheel. Okay. Bottom of these, around the fronts of those extensions. Okay, just like so. So we're just going to repeat it everywhere as we go. So we're just going to put a bit on the tail up here, so we just pick out little areas, and we're just doing this sort of brushing mark, and as I say, it just acts as a very, very quick filter on here. But the white side, you might be thinking, not a lot going on there. Well, that's where we'll take care of that in a moment. But what this does is just give that impression of dirt, grime, build up speed as it goes over. Now, it's one of those things, with all of this, you want to stop when you're happy, okay? You don't want to just keep going for the sake of it. You know, you want to be in a position where you think, no, I've had enough now, that looks right to me. Okay, it will just weather these things in, just make them look a little nicer. Okay, I'm just going to grab a little bit there. Okay. Remember, both sides of the wing, a bit tricky to hold on to. So this one's going to spend a lot of its time wings folded, so you expect it to get bits of grime on the inside, but certainly then we'll put in some speedy type things coming off of these. But what this will do is knock back again and break up and weather in the decals as well, so give the decals a bit of a rub type of thing like this. Now I don't know how well the camera's going to pick this up, but if you compare it to the two, hopefully you might be able to see a little bit going on there if we move the camera down a touch. Okay, so as you say, this one on this side has got it, this one hasn't. Okay, so you said it's just one of those things, personal choice how you do this. So you go right the way round. I'll just quickly finish this one off. We'll just do a bit there, a bit more in here. Now comes your fun bit. Old foam. This, to be honest, is quite the brittly stuff. You might be able to see it down here. It's the one that comes, to be honest, in Aries sets, so it's quite handy. Okay, so if we just start inside, what I'm going to do, lick it, okay, and then you can streak with it. And what it will do, see down here, it straight forward will bring alive everything that we've got under here. So what we do is just generally lightly pick out, and it should streak back like this and gives us this effect we were after. Because what it's doing is wetting the actual pigment, or not the pigment, but the pastel in this case. Okay, pull that hook, and just suddenly it wakes it up and thinks, oh hello, I'm a bit wet here, we're going to turn to a liquid. Okay, so we might be able to just pull little bits around to give us this type of effect. Now what you can do is grab a little bit of the pastel on a cloth, so if you wanted to put some in a particular area, so say we just want some down here, so we've just got it on our sponge, pick a bit up again, okay, place it where you want it, and then you can just streak it back. So if you wanted more of a black going on back here, perhaps around these engine areas, if you don't, then no problem. Thing is, if you don't leave it too long, what you can do, come along with a bit of kitchen roll, wet it, and you'll be able to wipe it off. Now I wouldn't leave it on there too long, but if you think you've overdone it, you can do it. But as you can see, we've gone around nicely and just weathered up the underside here to give us that nice grimy type of effect with it. So you can do exactly the same with the rest of the model. So you can, these areas where you've got it on here, you can just pull it round and it will give you that nice streaked look. I've got a couple of bits there. Okay, so you can, and it should knock it back just a little bit as you go. But I said it's one of these, it's one of those things that's really, really hard to show. But certainly, if you've got areas where you think, well, too much there, it's looking horrible. But what this does is instantly age your model. Okay, it will go from looking quite new to quite tired. Okay, and then I just take it round. Just mind aerials and things, which is usually my thing. So we're just going to streak a few little bits back here, just to liven it all up, and then let dry as we go around absolutely everywhere on this one. And there we go. Hopefully you can see now we've got more of a faded down look to it. It's looking really the business, all faded in. Now, two options. Overcoat it. Be very careful. When you're spraying a flat coat over this, you want to do it from a nice distance and spray in. Okay, so back out the spray bay. Looking very, very flat. Now, I've already put one wing on, purely to see how well they do go on. The easiest way I found to do it is, I'll show you in a moment, super glue kicker. Okay, so you can set the super glue instantly. That way you don't have to hold it there whilst it's drying, things like that. The other thing as well, these hold-up bars, you can see here, these red ones, actually do a very good job because it takes the weight of the model from you. So consequently, if you are coming in, you know, and you're leaning against it, it will lean on it and just takes the weight as you're settling up. The biggest problem is handling the model, because obviously it's got aerials, it's got very delicate bits all over this. So trying to find a spot where you can actually hold it is the problem. So anyway, what I tend to do, come along, I'm just going to put a drop of super glue, okay, which is a medium one, in each little tab as it goes in. Now, he says, trying to find somewhere to hold this, hold it around the front. It's going to be quite hard to show and do. So it just lines up with the slots that you've actually already got, okay, and then it should hold its own weight down on that particular thing. Now the thing is, you can hold it here for a second if you want whilst it starts to go off, or give it a squirt with kicker. Main trouble I've got now is I've got no way to get to the kicker, so this is when you need somebody around to give it a squirt for you. Okay, so you can start to let it roughly start to go off, but it is important you make sure they're pushed in firmly, because if it's hanging out a little bit, you tend to get the wrong angles. So what we're going to try and do is use my nose and then squirt with eyes shut. Don't try this at home, kids. Okay, and we'll just give it another kick. Okay, and there we have the wing section folded up. Now what I'm going to do is let the kicker, you know, set in, go off and do all its bits and pieces, okay, and then what you want to do then is come in then with a liquid poly afterwards to make sure, that way you don't get that fracture thing of like you knock it and it ends up going. The other thing as well, I've glued the actual base areas are glued in, the wings aren't. That way if I'm transporting this and it suddenly goes awry, let's assume that it gets a hit, the wing will just drop off, okay, and then that way I can put it in, but we don't want it being ripped out of absolutely everywhere. So there we go, that's it on. So what I'm going to do, let that dry for a few minutes, arm it all up, and we're ready for the final reveal. Okay, so there we go, all finished off. Weapons on, obviously just the rocket pods, we've got 4 in this particular type, and the fuel tanks on there. Just when you're putting them on, just be careful that you make a nice seam. So it might be worth taking a little bit of time, making sure that you actually get the pylons and the weapons all to fit nicely, because they are so visual on this, because you can look at them straight away. Unfortunately, all that weathering we did on the top of the wings you can't really see now because it's folded over, but it is a really nice situation because you've got the nice white of the underside showing where normally you wouldn't see that, and all the other bits and pieces like that. So it is nice having it folded up. Not only does it save a lot of space on your, obviously, your modelling shelves and things like that, but it does give it a certain look to it as well. It's been a great build, thoroughly enjoyed it. Again, kudos to Airfix, they've come along, got a fantastic kit. It goes together, no problems at all. We had no real trouble with filler, things like that. Okay, and a couple of little upgrades as we've done, adding some strapping ourselves using the old milliput way, and then certainly a photo etch cockpit, just because it gives you that nice sense of detail. It's one of those things, you look in there, you can really see it, and because it's got quite a nice open canopy, you can see a lot of that detail where originally I didn't think you were going to see too much. It really was worth it. Doing this type of weathering we've done on this one, we've covered a few different things in this one. So by lightening, darkening, going back to original colours, the pastel technique, going around it, things like that, just to liven it all up really does help to bring it to life. But I hope you agree, it's a real fascinating aircraft to do, a lot of fun, and certainly, you know, something a little bit different for your modelling shelf. I've thoroughly enjoyed this one. If you've enjoyed it as well, then join me again next time.